Hollywood movies are known for a lot of things. Peace, love, and light are not necessarily any of them. Despite the way in which so many public figures advocate for peaceful protest, political reform, and strict gun laws, many of these same celebrities star in movies that are rife with violence, murder, and lots of guns. Ah, the paradox of gratuitous violence in old hippie Hollywood. Many filmmakers and actors alike are guilty of this, saying one thing but portraying another totally different thing. Today, we'll be discussing James Cameron, one of the most prominent directors in the industry, if not all time. Cameron rose to fame for his action-packed blockbusters, such as Terminator, Aliens, and Avatar. But he's also known for his desire to avoid glamorizing guns and violence in his movies. However, despite giving it the old college try, James unintentionally made some of the most action-packed, exciting, violent, and appealing simulated weaponry of the 21st century film landscape. So let's dig into Cameron's relationship with violence and action in movies, his previous gun-touting work, his future plans for Avatar 3, and the paradox of Avatar 2, how James Cameron neglected his own ideals. The Avatar franchise is undoubtedly one of the biggest blockbusters in cinematic history. If you ask any random person on the street, most of them have seen at least one of the films. And why wouldn't you? The original film, released in 2009, was a groundbreaking achievement in both visual effects and storytelling. Avatar was a one-of-a-kind, industry-changing film. Not only did Cameron's tour de force change the way movies were made as we know it, but it went on to become the highest-grossing film of all time, with a worldwide box office total of over $2.7 billion. Avatar didn't just change the lives of moviegoers in North America. The film's success was due in large part to its international appeal, with over two-thirds of its box office gross coming from outside the United States. While the movie was known as a huge financial success, the accolades weren't just monetary. Avatar received critical acclaim and was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for James Cameron, ultimately winning a third of the awards it was nominated for. A huge feat for an animated film, which historically is not a category looked favorably upon at the Oscars. Avatar's success paved the way for a massive franchise, including multiple sequels, spin-offs, and merchandise. What is it about the subject matter of Avatar? What garnered the film so much attention? Well, the first Avatar explores themes of imperialism, violence, environmentalism, and even racism, all themes that Cameron intended to elicit an emotional reaction from the audience. Avatar is set on the fictional world of Pandora, where a group of human colonizers seeks to exploit the planet's resources and displace its indigenous population, the Na'vi. While the film's themes are pretty clear against violence and colonialism, the film itself has a significant amount of violence on both sides. However, Cameron's approach to violence is not to glorify it, but rather to show the devastating effects it has on not only the victim, but the person or people perpetrating the violence. Through the character of Jake Sully, who happens to be a former Marine, one that eventually becomes sympathetic to the Na'vi cause, the film shows that violence is not the answer, and it intends to show that there are many methods, namely community, love, understanding, and communication, to better help resolve conflicts. While Cameron clearly had some highly emotionally charged themes to tackle, which he managed to do brilliantly, if the box office numbers are anything to judge by, Cameron is predominantly a master of action and violence in his films. He knows how to create nail-biting, thrilling scenes that keep moviegoers sweatily on the edge of their seats and keeps them coming back for more. However, he's also aware of the dangers of glamorizing guns and violence, which, as we know, can have a negative impact on society, but particularly on the young and impressionable, or people with pre-existing mental health conditions. Cameron has been very vocal about his stance on this issue, and has even tried to work his way around gun violence in his other movies. In Terminator 2: Judgment Day, Cameron made the T-800 switch from using guns to non-lethal weapons. Similarly, in Avatar, he portrayed the Na'vi as peaceful beings, ones who didn't use guns, while the gun-touting humans colonizing Pandora were portrayed as ruthless and violent. Despite his efforts to avoid glamorizing guns and violence, Cameron's previous works such as Terminator, Aliens, and True Lies were all heavily, we're talking jam-packed, with loads of action, violence, and guns. But Cameron saw what he believed to be the error of his ways. I don't know if I would want to fetishize the gun like I did on a couple of Terminator movies 30+ years ago in our current world, said Cameron. What's happening with guns in our society turns my stomach. he continued. But was Cameron able to change his ways? Well, sort of. In Avatar 2: The Way of Water, he promised to take a different approach. He stressed that he wanted to focus more on the environment and the characters' relationships with one another, rather than on action and violence. Cameron has also said that he cut a whole 10 minutes from the sequel, most of which he claims were gun-filled minutes. If it's true that Cameron cut these movies due to gratuitous violence, and not because Avatar 2's runtime is over 3 hours, then it is a significant departure from his previous work, and shows perhaps a leopard is able to change his spots, or a director is capable of trying new things or putting his money where his mouth is. Cameron's ideals don't stop there, though. He is not just a writer and director extraordinaire, but also environmentalist and an explorer. While Cameron's interests are reflected in the films he makes, he has turned his ideals into real-life action by diving into the deepest parts of the ocean and filming documentaries about the underwater environment. Cameron became an explorer in residence as part of a partnership with National Geographic. During a solo dive on the Deep Sea Challenger, the director-turned-diver successfully commandeered a solo dive to the deepest part of the ocean, the Mariana Trench. Clearly, James is invested in living up to the beliefs he espouses. Cameron not only pursued this dive due to the lack of exploration of the deep sea, but he also wanted to bring everything he could to the table when creating Avatar 2. And what better way for a storyteller to bring his creation to life than to experience it firsthand? In the film, Cameron managed to create a beautiful, nuanced world, one that was rich in flora and fauna, and perfectly captured the movements in the water. The film highlighted the importance of preserving the precious underwater environment. However, despite its huge success, Avatar 2: The Way of Water inevitably received some criticisms, namely for being too preachy and heavy-handed. Hopefully, Cameron won't be met with the same criticism for the third installment. For the third Avatar film, which will be released on December 20th, 2024, the plot has been almost entirely kept under wraps. During a leak from the BBC in 2018, it was noted that the title for the third film will potentially be called The Seed Bearer. Perhaps the film will be an agricultural criticism focusing on world hunger. Whatever the themes the third film ends up tackling, Cameron should focus on striking a balance between his environmental message and the story he wants to tell, not preach. Regardless of Cameron's perceived past transgressions, there's no denying he is one of the most talented filmmakers of all time. Being at the position and level he is in the film industry, he has an unavoidable strong relationship with violence and action in movies. But he's also acutely aware of the dangers of glamorizing guns and violence. While Cameron has done what he can so far to sidestep violence in his films, and has made strides with matching his actions to his words, Cameron still, perhaps inadvertently, makes the violence in his blockbusters undeniably appealing. So, despite James Cameron's best efforts, this was the paradox of Avatar 2. James Cameron neglected his own ideals.